They thought they destroyed me when my birthright lit up on another man's skin. They branded me a fraud, carved shame into my flesh, and fed my humiliation to a roaring crowd. But the power they stole was never the true one, and the one that awakened in me should never have been touched by anyone alive. So before we continue, click on the subscribe button. My name is Aaron Kairos. The amphitheater glowed like a silver crown around me as I stepped into the center, every eye in Thalorind locked on my back. My hands shook, though I hid it well. Since childhood, I had been told that the Astrix seal would one day blaze across my skin. Tonight was supposed to be the moment my destiny unfolded. The heir will reveal himself, the herald announced. I exhaled, steadying myself. A beam of light descended, my heartbeat thundered, and then the impossible happened. The light slid past me, veering left. I turned just in time to see it carve itself across Lordran Vale's chest, brilliant and merciless. Gasps shattered the silence. A wave of whispers surged through the amphitheater, each one a blade slicing into me. No, no, this isn't right, I whispered, but my voice vanished under the roar. He's a falseborn, someone spat from the stands. My blood chilled. Lordran lifted his chin smugly. I never thought the truth would be revealed so beautifully. The council nodded in agreement. Thousands stared at me with disgust, pity, triumph, anything but belief. And in that single moment, the future I had been raised for was handed to another man while I stood helplessly, watching my own birthright betray me. I barely felt my legs when the guards grabbed me. One moment I was heir, the next I was dragged like a criminal toward the ceremonial dais. The crowd leaned forward, hungry. I could feel them feeding on my humiliation. Aaron Kairos is hereby declared Null-Blood, the High Warden announced. The words hit harder than any blade. Null-Blood wasn't exile, it was erased. It meant I had no true lineage, no legacy, no right to speak my family's name ever again. Two guards forced me to my knees. They didn't need to, I no longer had the strength to stand. The brand was heated until it glowed white. The spiral symbol of emptiness, the mark reserved for the realm's greatest disgrace, my disgrace. Hold him, the warden ordered. I clenched my jaw as the iron pressed into my collarbone. Pain erupted through me, sharp and merciless, like fire latching onto my bones. My vision blurred, my breath shattered. I refused to scream, even when the scent of burning skin filled the air. When the brand lifted, the crowd exhaled as one. Behold the fraud, the warden declared. I raised my head. I saw satisfaction in their eyes, relief, enjoyment. They didn't just condemn me, they savored it. Hours later, after the crowd dispersed and my name was officially erased, I found myself wandering the frost-covered cliffs outside the capital. My collarbone throbbed with the Null-Blood mark, raw, humiliating, unforgettable. Every stranger who passed me looked away. Some smirked. I thought the day couldn't wound me any deeper. I was wrong. A pulse of heat rippled through the brand. I froze. The symbol glowed, soft at first, then brighter, almost alive. The lines twisted beneath my skin, reshaping themselves. Brands were permanent, dead. They did not move. What are you doing? I muttered, touching it. Instead of pain, warmth surged through my fingertips. A pull, quiet, ancient, yanked at my chest, directing me toward the cliffs. The ground trembled faintly, as if something beneath it recognized me. The brand brightened again, illuminating the rocks around me. Then the cliffsides split open. A narrow passage revealed itself, swallowing the moonlight as if it had been waiting for me alone. I stared into the darkness, heart racing. The Dominion believed they had given me a mark of shame, but whatever lived beyond, that cracker was calling me. And it didn't feel like shame, it felt like recognition. The passage spiraled downward, colder with each step. Symbols, older than any Dominion script, glowed faintly along the walls, awakening as I neared. They pulsed in harmony with the brand on my collarbone. My breath fogged as I stepped into a vast underground chamber. And then I saw it. Floating at the center was a sphere of fractured light, colors bending and folding into each other. It wasn't warm or cold, it was something in between, something alive. The air around it felt dense, aware. The brand seared suddenly. I stumbled forward as the lines reshaped themselves across my skin, rewriting the mark I'd been given hours ago. The sphere reacted. Light burst outward, not to harm, but to greet me. The chamber hummed, resonating with something inside my blood. I felt the energy thread through my veins, filling me with a presence ancient enough to terrify the world above. A realization slammed into me. This was the Veilcore, a lost power sealed away centuries before Thalorind even existed. And it was choosing me. The brand finally settled, its spiral transformed into an entirely different symbol, one I didn't recognize, but somehow understood. The Dominion called me Null-Blood, but the Veilcore whispered a different truth. Only your blood could wake me. I didn't breathe, I couldn't. The light from the Veilcore wrapped around me like a cocoon, neither burning nor soothing, just knowing. Every instinct screamed that I should run, yet my body moved closer as if compelled by something older than memory. When my fingers hovered inches from the sphere, it pulsed once, and the chamber fell silent. The world vanished. Not darkness, something deeper. A void where sound, time, and breath had no meaning. Then a whisper, not spoken aloud but pressed directly into my bloodstream. Blood unbroken, lineage concealed, you are the first in 1,000 years. My heart slammed against my ribs. I tried to pull my hand back, but the Veilcore held me, not forcibly, but intimately, like a truth refusing to let me retreat. Images flooded my mind. A throne carved from fractured light, a symbol identical to the one forming on my skin, a war erased from all records, people falling, a king dying, a child smuggled into obscurity. A name, distant and heavy, echoed across the void. Heir of the first sovereign. Then the light snapped back. I stumbled away, gasping, gripping the wall as the chamber steadied. The Veilcore dimmed, almost shy, as if it had revealed too much too soon. Heir to a sovereign erased from history. The Null-Blood brand hadn't exposed fraud, it had hidden the truth. My legs were unsteady as I moved deeper into the chamber. Carvings lined the walls, more detailed now, illuminated by the mark on my skin. I raised my hand, and the symbols brightened in response. The Dominion's archives taught that Thalorind was founded after the era of collapse, but what I saw etched here was older, far older. These carvings depicted a lineage of rulers wielding the Veilcore, not the Astrix seal. Their power was fluid, radiant, terrifying in its beauty. Then I found it, a mural of a king crowned in fractured light, holding the same symbol now burned into my skin. Beneath it, words in an ancient tongue shifted into meaning. The first sovereign's bloodline alone may command the Veilcore. If the line falls, the world must forget. My pulse was hammered. Forget. The Dominion hadn't just lost this history, they had buried it. Another line below. Beware the imitators, they cannot hold what they do not inherit. Lordran, the false Astrix seal, the flicker I'd seen in his eyes as the sigil burned into him. He hadn't been chosen, he'd been forced into a role he couldn't sustain. The chamber vibrated once, subtly. Something in Thalorind above us was beginning to crack. I approached the Veilcore again, cautiously this time. It pulsed softly, as though acknowledging me, not as a master, not as a supplicant, but as something equal. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. The answer wasn't words, it resonated. The mark on my collarbone lit up, and my surroundings sharpened. Every carving, every crack in the stone, every shift in the air seemed to slide into perfect clarity, like the chamber had been waiting for my senses to catch up. I felt attuned, as if the chamber breathed with me. A second pulse erupted from the Veilcore, gentle but insistent. My knees buckled as a surge of energy threaded through my blood. Not overwhelming, not painful, just right, like something long dormant was finally stretching awake. Then the resonance shifted. Images flashed again, not visions this time, but glimpses of the present, Lordran clutching his chest as the false Strix seal flickered wildly, the High Council arguing in panic, cracks forming in the Dominion's sigil matrix above the capital. My breath caught. The Veilcore wasn't simply awakening me. It was showing me the consequences of a stolen birthright. The Dominion believed they'd humiliated me into silence, but their entire system was unraveling. And the only bloodline that could stabilize it was the one they branded Null-Blood. I emerged from the cavern hours later, or maybe minutes. Time seemed to behave differently near the Veilcore. Night had deepened, but the air above ground felt charged, as though the sky itself sensed an imbalance. Lights flickered across the capital, a sharp crack split the silence. I turned just in time to see a column of blue energy fracture across the horizon, the Dominion's primary sigil tower. It pulsed erratically, destabilizing the power grid woven through the city. People rushed into the streets in confusion and fear. Another crack, another pulse. The Strix seal, Thalorin's greatest symbol of stability, was failing. A sick realization unfurled in my chest. Lordran's false inheritance wasn't just killing him, it was tearing the Dominion's foundations apart. Whispers carried through the night as citizens clustered in panic. Why is the seal destabilizing? Where is Lordran? Did we choose the wrong heir? Was Aaron truly the Null-Blood, or? My heart pounded. The Dominion didn't know it yet, but they were standing at the edge of the truth they had buried. And this time, the consequences wouldn't humiliate me, they would expose them. I pulled my cloak tighter and slipped into the alleys. It was time to move in silence. They destroyed me publicly, but my rise would be unseen until the moment they needed me the most. I kept to the shadows as I moved through the city. The Dominion felt wrong. The air hummed with unstable energy, the kind that precedes disaster. I had seen the sigil tower crack from afar, but here, within the streets, I felt the tremors beneath my feet. People whispered fearfully as arcs of blue light danced along the rooftops. It's collapsing. No heir has ever lost control like this. My lantern sigils just went dead. Each voice was a dagger twisting deeper into my chest. This chaos wasn't an accident. It was Lordran's false claim of rotting the seal from inside. I ducked behind a stone archway as a patrol passed, council guards, tense and alert. Find him, one muttered, if Aaron Kairos knows anything about this. My pulse spiked. They were already hunting me. Of course they were. The Dominion didn't seek accountability, they sought convenient scapegoats. The Null-Blood, the disgrace, the one they publicly crushed. But beneath their desperation, I sensed something else, fear. The kind that comes when a lie begins to collapse under its own weight. A ground-shaking boom echoed from the palace district. The sigil tower had just lost another stabilizing ring. I exhaled slowly. The Dominion wasn't just breaking. It was unraveling because they crowned the wrong heir. I slipped into the outskirts, toward the ridge overlooking the palace. From here, I could see the sigil tower flickering violently, its once steady glow now a frantic pulse. And in its shadow, the council palace glimmered erratically, as if struggling to protect itself. Then I saw him. Lordran staggered across a balcony, clutching his chest. Even from a distance, I could see the Strix seal on his skin spasming, its lines fracturing, bleeding light. He gasped, collapsing to one knee. The false sigil was devouring him. A quiet, cold realization washed through me. He hadn't stolen my birthright. He had swallowed a curse meant for those who pretend to be chosen. He raised trembling fingers to his chest, as if trying to steady the sigil. But the seal rejected him again and again. Every flicker sent shockwaves through the Dominion's sigil network. His scream tore through the night, raw, panicked, uncontained. Guards rushed to him, but their touch only made the seal flare violently, forcing them back. Lordran's eyes were wild, filled with the terror of a man realizing the crown he stole was killing him. "Make it stop," I heard him choke from across the distance. But nothing could save him. Not when the very power rejecting him was already awakening inside me. I descended from the ridge, keeping low. As I moved closer to the city's heart, I heard frantic shouts echoing through the palace corridors. Inside a cracked outer hall, counselors gathered in disarray, robes torn, sigils flickering, fear etched across their once arrogant faces. "The seal is destabilizing the central matrix. We cannot contain it. Where is Lordran? He must reassert control." "He can't," another counselor snapped. "He's rejecting the sigil, or the sigil is rejecting him." Silence strangled them. They finally understood. I stayed hidden behind a marble pillar, listening as their voices trembled. "Find Aaron," the High Warden said, voice hoarse. "If the false heir is collapsing, the true one may still be." His breath caught as he choked on the word. "Alive." Alive, they spoke of me as if I were a tool they'd misplaced. They didn't want me. They wanted stability, a quick fix for their failing kingdom. But they had forgotten something vital. They broke me publicly, branded me like livestock, called me a fraud, a stain, a Null-Blood. And now they needed me. I let the thought settle in my chest, cold and steady. Revenge doesn't require violence. Sometimes the quiet truth is sharper than any blade. I retreated into the narrow alleys behind the palace, cloaked in darkness. My thoughts swirled, rage simmering beneath the surface, but not hot and reckless. Cold, precise, purposeful. The Veilcore thrummed faintly beneath my skin, responding to the crumbling sigil network around me. It wasn't urging me toward anger. It was urging me toward clarity. I remembered the moment they branded me, the crowd's satisfaction, the council's arrogance. I remembered how they stripped my identity with a smile. And now they sought my return. Not because they regretted what they'd done, not because they saw my worth, but because the throne was falling apart in their hands. A spark of energy flickered along my collarbone. The symbol, the true symbol, glowed through my shirt, sensing the Dominion's weakness. I breathed deeply. I could walk into the palace now, reveal the truth, save the realm, and they would bow to me. But saving them immediately wasn't my path. Understanding the Veilcore, mastering it, came first. If I confronted them now, I'd walk into their stage again. Humiliation had been scripted for me once. I wouldn't let them write the next act. I stepped deeper into the shadows. Let them panic, let them search, let them fear the consequences of their own lie. I would return when the world needed me, not when they demanded me. I reached the far outskirts of the capital before the Veilcore stirred again. The mark on my collarbone pulsed, not urgently, but insistently, like a hand tapping my shoulder from somewhere deep inside the earth. Then came the whisper, not a voice, but a resonance vibrating through my bones. "Return." My knees nearly buckled. The pull wasn't physical, it was ancestral, echoing through blood older than the Dominion itself. I knew immediately where it was getting me. Back to the cavern, back to the source. The Dominion wailed behind me, alarms ringing, sigils cracking, towers flickering like dying stars. I heard none of it clearly. The Veilcore's call drowned out everything else. As I approached the cliffs, the mark brightened, illuminating the stone. The hidden passage opened without effort this time, as if recognizing my approach. Inside, the chamber felt different, warmer, brighter, alive. The Veilcore hovered at the center, its fractured light now steadier, clearer, as if it too had been waiting. I stepped forward, breath trembling. "You chose me," I murmured. "Why?" The sphere pulsed once, then twice. The cavern trembled softly. A wave of understanding washed through me, not words, but an undeniable truth. The first sovereign's power wasn't meant to be inherited, it was meant to return through me. The light enveloped me before I could brace for it. It slid over my skin like liquid memory, settling behind my eyes. Suddenly, I could see the chamber as it had once been, alive with movement, alive with purpose. And then I saw him. A figure formed entirely from fractured light stood before the Veilcore. Broad shoulders, regal posture, eyes shimmering like molten silver. The first sovereign, my ancestor. He didn't speak, yet I understood him. Images imprinted themselves into my mind. A war against those who sought to control the Veilcore, a betrayal from within the royal bloodline, a desperate attempt to save the world by erasing his own legacy, a child smuggled away, a lineage buried so deeply even time forgot it. My lungs tightened. I wasn't merely the heir, I was the consequence of a forgotten king's final act. The echo of the sovereign stepped closer, raising a hand to my chest. As his fingers touched the symbol carved into my skin, the brand flared, rewriting itself once more, settling into its true form. Not a brand of shame, not a mark of banishment. A crest. The crest of the veiled throne. My breath trembled. The Dominion thought they had silenced me, but they had unknowingly restored a bloodline they meant to erase. Days blurred into each other as I trained within the chamber. The Veilcore guided me through every step, not with instructions, but with resonance. Each pulse taught me how to anchor my breath, channel my thoughts, and align my heartbeat with its rhythm. When I exhaled, the chamber dimmed. When I inhaled, the symbols along the walls ignited. I learned to sense the Dominion's instability through the vibrations in the stone, every crack in the sigil network, every surge of chaotic energy caused by Lordran's failing seal. With each passing hour, my mastery sharpened. My senses expanded until I could feel life across the capital like threads tugging on my consciousness. I felt Lordran weakening. I felt the panic of the council. I felt the people's fear swelling like a storm. The Veilcore pulsed gently, affirming my readiness. I wasn't becoming a weapon, I was becoming a counterbalance. When I finally opened my eyes after a deep resonance trance, the cavern felt smaller because I had grown into something larger, something inevitable. Outside, the Dominion was crumbling. Inside, the true heir was waking. I ran a hand across my collarbone. The crest of the veiled throne shimmered beneath my touch. "I'm ready," I whispered. The Veilcore pulsed once, as if saying, "Then rise." When I emerged from the cavern, the world was not the same. The sky above Thalorind was fractured, cracks of blue energy slicing through the clouds like lightning that refused to fade. The sigil tower had splintered completely. Beams of unstable light shot upward in desperate, uneven intervals. People fled through the streets in terror. Families huddled together as sigil lanterns shattered overhead. The air tasted of metal and panic. I moved unnoticed among the shadows, the crest burning faintly beneath my cloak. Every tremor in the ground vibrated through my bones, echoing the Dominion's collapse. A sound broke through the chaos, Lordran's voice, amplified by desperation. "Help me," he screamed from the palace balcony. I looked up. The Astrix seal on his chest flickered like a dying flame. His skin was pale, sweat-drenched, his breath shallow. Each pulse of the false sigil sent another shockwave through the kingdom. Counselors surrounded him helplessly. "We must find Aaron. He's the only one who can. Where is he? Where would he run?" The irony was sharp enough to draw blood. They didn't realize the truth yet. I wasn't running, I wasn't hiding. I was watching and choosing when to return. The Dominion had never needed me more, and I had never felt so calm. I moved through the outskirts unseen, watching the Dominion choke on the consequences of its own arrogance. There was a strange stillness inside me, a quiet center the Veilcore had carved into my spirit. Not rage, not triumph, control. Every cracked sigil, every burst of unstable energy, every cry of panic reached me like ripples in a distant lake. I felt them, but they didn't drown me. Instead, they sharpened my purpose. Crowds gathered at the palace gates, demanding answers. Some wept, some screamed Lordran's name like a curse. Others whispered the word I thought I'd never hear again. Aaron. Their voices trembled, not with hatred this time, but with desperation. The irony tasted bitter. The same people who cheered my humiliation now begged for my existence. But I wasn't ready to reveal myself, not yet. Timing was the final blade in a quiet revenge. Reveal too early, and the world still sees you as the broken heir. Reveal too late, and the collapse becomes indiscriminate. No! I would return at the precise moment their pride shattered, the moment they finally saw. The Veilcore pulsed beneath my skin, steady and patient. The Dominion wasn't just falling apart, it was preparing for the truth. And I would deliver it, with silence sharper than any sword. Night fell heavy over the capital as I made my way toward the palace outskirts. Every time the false Strix seal surged, I felt the shockwave tremble through the city like a heartbeat under strain. Then I heard it, Lordran's scream, roar enough to strip the air. I crept closer, hidden behind fractured pillars. Lordran collapsed in the center of the grand hall, surrounded by panicked healers and counselors. His chest flickered violently, the sigil tearing itself apart. Light bled into his veins like poison. "It's rejecting me," he rasped. "Fix it, fix it." The High Warden knelt beside him, trembling. "Lordran, your body cannot sustain the seal. You are not chosen," Lordran snarled. "I am chosen." But the seal disagreed. Each time he tried to rise, it flared brighter, burning through his skin, fracturing the marble beneath him. He coughed blood, still clawing at the fadding symbol as if hate alone could hold power. I watched him struggle, and for a moment, pity flickered in my chest. He didn't steal my birthright out of strength. He stole it out of terror, fear of being ordinary. But power that isn't meant for you becomes punishment. His punishment had begun the moment he claimed what wasn't his. Inside the palace, order disintegrated into chaos. Counselors shouted across the hall, blaming one another, grasping at authority that slipped through their fingers like sand. The seal is destabilizing the entire Dominion. We must shut down the Matrix. We need Aaron. Where is he? He won't come. We branded him. Then we UN brand him, for the realm's sake. I almost laughed. Their panic was a mirror reflecting their hypocrisy, beautiful, tragic, deserved. From my vantage in the shadows, I watched the mighty council crumble. Their robes, once pristine symbols of control, hung crooked, torn, stained with fear. The High Warden, who had pressed the brand into my skin, now trembled so violently he could barely stand. One counselor slammed his fists into the table. "We were wrong about Aaron. The seal chose no one because the true bloodline was erased," another whispered. "No," the High Warden swallowed hard. "It wasn't erased, it was buried." A painful silence followed. They finally knew. And still not one apology, not one admission of cruelty, only regret driven by self-preservation. The Veilcore thrummed softly beneath my skin, as if sharing my calm. Their rule was ending, not by rebellion, not by war, but by the weight of the truth they tried to bury it. And I was the truth. I stepped away from the crumbling council chamber and moved into the night air, letting the wind cool the heat beneath my collarbone. The crest shimmered faintly beneath my shirt. Thalorin's sky had fully fractured now, thin lines of glowing energy veining the darkness. Every crack in the heavens mirrored a crack in the Dominion's power. The time had come. Not for vengeance, not for spectacle, but for revelation. The Veilcore stirred once more, not a command, an acknowledgement. I closed my eyes and breathed in deeply. Their betrayal no longer chained me, their shame no longer defined me. What they stole was never theirs to hold, and what I carried was never meant to remain hidden. I opened my eyes. "I rise now," I whispered. not as the shattered heir they branded, not as the Null-Blood they mocked, but as the one thing they feared without knowing why. The rightful continuation of a forgotten throne, the return of the veiled sovereign. The city trembled as I stepped from the shadows and walked toward the palace gates. Not quietly, not loudly, just inevitably. The fractured sky glowed brighter as I approached the palace gates. Guards scrambled, shouting orders that dissolved into panic. The sigil-towers groaned under their failing magic, releasing streaks of unstable light into the air. People noticed me as I passed. Some gasped, some fell silent, some whispered my name, hesitant, reverent, afraid. I didn't speak, my presence did. Each step forward resonated with the Veilcore's pulse beneath my skin. The crest shone faintly through the fabric of my shirt, responding to the Dominion's collapse. It wasn't rage that filled me, it was inevitability. As I reached the grand entrance, a trembling guard pointed his spear. Halt, the council forbids. The sigil on his armor flickered, then went dark. He stepped back on instinct, fear widening his eyes. I walked past him without slowing. Inside, the palace shook violently. Chunks of marble rained from the ceiling as the sigil network ruptured again. Lordran's scream echoed from deeper within, raw and broken. It's tearing me apart. I followed the sound. Every corridor I entered brightened, not by torches, but by the reflection of my crest. The palace itself seemed to recognize me. For the first time since my humiliation, I no longer felt like an intruder in these halls. I felt like the heir coming home. I found Lordran kneeling in the throne chamber, the Astrix seal raging across his chest like wildfire. Light tore through his veins, cracking the floor beneath him. He looked up when he sensed me. His eyes widened, not with hatred, but with something far worse. Recognition. You, he whispered, voice shredded, you shouldn't be alive. I wasn't, I replied softly, not in the way you meant. The seal flared violently at the sound of my voice, rejecting him harder. He convulsed, gasping as the sigil burned brighter. You don't understand, Lordran choked. I had to take it, I was nothing without it. That's the difference between us, I said. You needed a throne to feel worthy, I never did. He clawed at the fading sigil. Help me, please, everything is falling apart. I stepped closer, and the room reacted. The collapsing towers outside hummed in sync with my heartbeat. The palace walls glowed faintly with Veilcore resonance. Lordran stared at my collarbone as the fabric shifted, revealing the crest. His breath caught. That symbol, it's impossible. No, I answered, it's original. The seal shattered with a burst of light. Lordran collapsed, chest rising shallowly, stripped of all false power. Not defeated by me. Defeated by the truth. As Lordran lay trembling, the throne room doors burst open. Counselors spilled inside, robes torn, eyes wild with terror. Their gazes snapped from Lordran's fallen form to me. A wave of silence crashed over the room. The High Warden, the man who branded me, stumbled forward. His voice cracked. Aaron, we need your help. My jaw tightened. You needed me long before this. He collapsed to his knees, not out of reverence, out of fear. The others followed, a cascade of trembling bodies lowering themselves before the person they had declared Null-Blood. We were wrong, a counselor sobbed. The Dominion, the seal, none of it recognizes us anymore. Another whispered, only your crest stabilizes the towers, only your presence stops the collapse. The Veilcore pulsed gently beneath my skin, responding to their admission. I stepped toward the dais, the same dais where they stripped me of everything. My footsteps echoed with poetic inevitability. Look at what your pride wrought, I said quietly. Look at what your lies nearly destroyed. Some wept harder, some stared in shame, some in awe. I wasn't angry anymore. There was no need for anger when truth had already broken them. I placed my hand on the throne, not to claim it, but to steady the collapsing realm. And the Dominion breathed again. The moment my palm touched the throne's surface, a deep resonance hummed through the stone, through the palace, through the entire Dominion. The fractured sky rippled outward like glass mending itself. The sigil-towers stabilized. The streets were still. People gasped as the energy in the air settled into a balanced, quiet glow. The Veilcore's pulse aligned with mine, and for the first time since the ceremony of revelation, Thalorind exhaled. A soft light radiated from my crest, threading through the throne room like strands of dawn. Counselors shielded their eyes, some cried. Even Lordran, trembling on the floor, felt the shift and stopped convulsing. This was not the power they expected, not domination, not destruction. Alignment. The power of the first sovereign returned to its rightful vessel. When the light dimmed, the High Warden looked up at me. The Dominion lives because of you. No, I corrected. It lives because I chose not to let it die. His eyes lowered. I stepped back from the throne. I had restored balance, not claimed a crown. Rise, I said quietly. They did slowly, uncertainly, watching me with reverence they once lavished on the false heir. But they didn't understand the truth. I wasn't here to rule. I was here to reclaim what they could never take, my lineage. I stood at the center of the throne room, surrounded by the people who once mocked, branded, and discarded me. Yet there was no triumph in my chest, only clarity. Revenge had already happened, not through violence, not through cruelty, but through revelation. They destroyed themselves with their greed long before I ever touched the throne. The High Warden approached cautiously. If you wish the throne, it is yours by right. I shook my head. I do not need a throne to claim my bloodline. He swallowed. Then what do you wish, sovereign? The title settled strangely in my ears, both new and ancient. I turned toward the fractured sky, now mending into morning light. I want a dominion that no longer builds its foundations on lies, and if you wish to rebuild, you'll do it without branding another innocent soul. No one spoke. I walked toward the exit, each step echoing through the hall that once held my humiliation. No chains bound me now, no judgment touched me. I was free. And more than that, I was undeniable. As I reached the threshold, I spoke without turning back. Remember this, you never broke me, you revealed it to me. The hall remained silent long after I left. Weeks passed, Thalorind rebuilt slowly, truth rewritten into history. People spoke my name with reverence, but I kept to the outskirts. The Veilcore rested inside me like a companion. I walked through the valley at dusk, the sky glowing with restored sigil lines. Despite everything, I felt peace. As I rested on the cliffs, the Veilcore warmed against my skin, a quiet promise. Somewhere beyond the horizon, something unfamiliar stirred. I stood slowly. The Dominion might no longer fear me, but the world was beginning to remember what I was. And what I could become. Speech balloon comment, next arc for part 2. Like and subscribe for more epic stories.